50 Cent just recently appeared on Good Morning America to promote his new documentary about Sean Diddy Combs, titled Sean Combs: The Reckoning. Officially, it just looked like a normal press run. But knowing 50, the undisputed king of pettiness, we all know there's usually a reason behind everything he does. And it turns out he chose ABC for a specific reason. ABC is one of the few major networks that's commonly available inside prison, meaning there was a very good chance Diddy would see it. And honestly, that feels so on brand for 50. Because 50 has been warning people about Diddy for years. Going on interviews, joking about Diddy, trying to take him shopping, trolling him on Instagram, most people just brushed it off. That's just 50 being 50. But now, with everything that's surfaced, those old clips are getting replayed very differently. And right after that interview, 50 released a documentary he'd been working on for nearly 2 years, sourcing some genuinely shocking footage about Diddy. Not everything made the cut. Some stories were too messy, and some voices were too risky. But here's what Netflix didn't show. The night Biggie died and what was left out. March 9th, 1997, Los Angeles. The city was already on edge. 6 months earlier, Tupac Shakur had been killed, and the tension between the East Coast and West Coast was still fresh. Everyone in hip-hop knew LA wasn't safe. That night, Biggie stepped out anyway. He was in town promoting life after death, and despite the warnings, he showed up at a Vibe magazine party at the Peterson Automotive Museum. Netflix shows what happened next. As Biggie's SUV pulled away, it was ambushed at the corner of Wilshire and South Fairfax. 4 shots were fired. 1 was fatal. Biggie was gone before the city could even process what happened. But while the world focused on Biggie's murder, something else was happening just blocks away. Another bad boy artist was trapped, Mace. According to Mace, he was trapped in a hotel room with dozens of bloods outside his door, lining the hallway. He couldn't move or step out, and no one from the crew came to get him. Later, whispers began circulating that Mace may have been a secondary target, not because of who he was publicly, but because of what he allegedly knew. Information about Bad Boy's inner workings, details that were never meant to surface. Whether that's true or not, one thing is undeniable. That night shattered the illusion of loyalty. When everything went wrong, it was every man for himself. Eventually, former Bad Boy security guard Gene Deal navigated through the chaos and helped Mace get out. But by then, the damage was done. That night changed how Mace saw everything, and Netflix didn't even show it. The lawsuit that dropped one day too late. Here's where the timeline gets uncomfortable. Just one day after the documentary went live, a lawsuit surfaced that immediately changed the conversation. A woman identified as Jane Doe amended an existing case against Sean Diddy Combs and added another name, Jay-Z. The amended filing alleged that both men assaulted her when she was just 13 years old, following an MTV afterparty in the year 2000. Jay-Z responded quickly, denying all allegations and calling them false. If this lawsuit had surfaced even a few days earlier, the documentary would have looked completely different. Entire sections would have been reframed. New questions would have shaped the story. For viewers, it was jarring. One day, the documentary felt like the final word. The next day, it already felt incomplete. And that's the danger of real-time storytelling. Because when events are still unfolding, the truth doesn't wait for the final edit. The voice Netflix erased, Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, a man who stood beside him during the height of Bad Boy Records, someone who was present for the late nights, studio sessions, parties, and moments that never made headlines. Gene Deal has been speaking publicly for years, sharing what he claims he witnessed behind the scenes. His interviews have racked up millions of views. He's appeared on multiple podcasts and radio shows, consistently telling the same stories with the same details. One of the reasons Gene Deal never appears in the documentary becomes clear when you hear the story he tells most often. The Central Park story Netflix wouldn't touch. It goes back to 1999. At the time, Diddy was facing intense pressure ahead of his nightclub shooting trial. The possibility of conviction was real, and according to Gene Deal, the fear for him was overwhelming. According to him, Diddy brought him to Central Park to meet a man known for performing rituals. Deal says smoke was burned, chants were spoken, and a ritual was performed that he believed was meant to influence the outcome of the trial. One detail he has repeated consistently over the years involves a white bird, which he says was part of the ritual. Afterward, Deal claims they went directly from Central Park to the courthouse. This story has been told many times, across many interviews, always with the same details. But here's the issue. There's no way to independently verify a private ritual that allegedly took place over 2 decades ago, in the middle of a public park, without witnesses or records. And for a platform like Netflix, that makes it untouchable. The Justin Bieber video that aged badly. Back in 2009, when Justin Bieber was just 15 years old, a video appeared on Diddy's official YouTube channel. Justin Bieber's 48 Hours with Diddy Diddy. In the clip, Diddy says he has custody of Bieber for the next 48 hours and describes it as a dream experience. He says that where they're going and what they're doing can't be disclosed. At the time, it didn't raise any flags. It felt like celebrity access. But years later, after Diddy's arrest, that same video resurfaced. And suddenly, it felt very eerie. A powerful industry figure with a minor, and undisclosed activities openly mentioned on camera. Netflix didn't include this footage, not because it isn't real, but because even revisiting it creates implications a mainstream documentary can't safely manage. Years later, Bieber's team addressed the situation directly. His representative clarified that Justin himself was not a victim. But the statement didn't end there. It also acknowledged that other individuals were genuinely harmed. That single sentence shifted the conversation. What actually happened during those 48 hours? And why did this footage suddenly feel so disturbing in hindsight? Netflix never asked those questions. And by avoiding them, they left another chapter untouched. Usher and Puffy Flavor Camp. In the early 90s, Usher was just 13 years old. Usher was sent to live with Diddy for an entire year. It was called Puffy Flavor Camp. The idea, at least on the surface, was mentorship. Diddy would show him the ropes, help him grow as an artist, and introduce him to the music industry. But the reality was very different. Usher has said that year was wild, not occasionally, constantly. He's spoken openly about being surrounded by adult environments, parties, women, drugs, and situations no 13-year-old should be exposed to. Not once or twice, every day. This wasn't a structured program. It wasn't supervised training. It was a child placed inside an adult world that even grown men struggle to navigate. Years later, when Usher was asked a simple question, whether he would ever send his own children to Puffy Flavor Camp, his answer came instantly. No. No hesitation, no explanation needed. After Diddy's arrest in 2024, fans noticed something else. Usher quietly wiped his social media presence. Posts disappeared. Accounts went dark. No statement, no clarification, just silence. Netflix barely touched this story. There was no deep dive into that year, no exploration of what a 13-year-old experienced living inside that environment, and no real attempt to connect it to the larger pattern forming around Diddy's presence. Kim Porter, the story that changes everything. Kim Porter wasn't an outsider looking in. She was Diddy's longtime partner, the mother of his children, and someone who witnessed the rise of his empire from the inside. That's why her absence from the documentary is so striking. Kim Porter passed away on November 15th, 2018. The official cause of death was pneumonia, but the weeks leading up to her death raised questions the documentary never addressed. Just weeks earlier, Kim appeared publicly at a Hollywood premiere. Reports said she wasn't feeling well. She had flu-like symptoms and a high fever. Still, she showed up. Photos from that night tell a quiet story. A perfect family image, cameras flashing, everyone smiling. But people close to Kim later said she was struggling. Around that same time, reports surfaced that Kim had been considering writing a book. Nothing officially announced, no manuscript released. Just the idea that she may have wanted to tell her story, her experiences raising children in the industry, her life behind the scenes, and everything she had seen along the way. Well, that book never came out. Kim and Diddy's relationship had always been complicated. They met in the mid-90s, had their first child in 98, separated and reconciled multiple times, and continued co-parenting even after they were no longer together. There were also darker chapters. During one separation, Kim became involved with music executive Shakir Stewart. Reports later circulated online claiming that Diddy reacted violently during that period, allegedly leaving Kim with a broken nose. Months later, Stewart died from a gunshot wound that was ruled as self-inflicted. No charges were filed. No public conclusions beyond official reports. Netflix never touched this timeline. In her final days, Kim reportedly sent her children to stay with Diddy while she recovered. And just days before she passed, she told him to take care of them. That detail matters because it shows where her focus was, her children, even in the end. Including Kim Porter's story would have shifted the documentary in a way Netflix wasn't prepared for. The adoption that wasn't. In 2020, a video surfaced online that confused a lot of people. It showed Diddy sitting with a young girl named Ava Baroni. In the clip, she calls him Papa Combs. He kisses her on the cheek, and then he tells the camera that he adopted her. That video spread quickly, and most people took it at face value. Social media reacted as if a real adoption had taken place. But something didn't add up. There was no paperwork, no public records, and no follow-up explanation. And as the time passed, Ava didn't appear in family photos or public events the way people expected. Years later, reports clarified what actually happened. According to sources close to the situation, no legal adoption ever took place. The video was described as a skit. Ava was said to be a close friend of Diddy's twin daughters, and the moment was meant to be playful, not official. But by then, the confusion had already done its damage, because the way the video was framed mattered. Why present it as an adoption if it wasn't one? Why share it publicly without clarification? And why wait years to correct the narrative? Netflix avoided this story entirely, because once children enter the picture, especially in situations that aren't clearly defined, the risk multiplies instantly, and uncertainty becomes something platforms would rather ignore than explain.